I'm going to tell you how the Bills can beat the Bucs in Week 11 today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Locked On Bills is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Well, folks, welcome in. It's time to get ready for the Bills' Week 11 opponent, the challenges they present, and what the Bills need to do to deal with them. So let's do it. The Bills are back at home in Week 11 to host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The game will be played on Sunday, November 16th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time at Highmark Stadium in Orchard Park, New York. You can watch this game on CBS. Ian Eagle is on the play-by-play. J.J. Watt is the game analyst, and Evan Washburn is the sideline reporter. This will be the 14th all-time meeting between the Bills and Bucs. The Bills are 5-8 all-time against Tampa Bay. They have played a few times recently. Back in 2023, the Bills won 24-18. And then in 2021, the Bills lost in Tampa Bay against the Tom Brady Bucs. It was an overtime loss. The Bills enter this game 6-3, just like the Bucs. They are 6-3. Tampa's 6 wins have come against the Falcons, Texans, Jets, Seahawks, 49ers, and Saints. Their losses to the Eagles, Lions, and Patriots. The head coach of the Buccaneers is Todd Bowles. This is his 4th season as Tampa's head coach. He's 33-27 so far with the Bucs. They won the division each of his first 3 seasons. They're probably going to do that again. Prior to being the Bucs head coach, he was their defensive coordinator under Bruce Arians, but he was also a head coach for the Jets from 2015 to 2018, and he was 24-40. They never made the playoffs in his 3 seasons with the Jets. So also had 3 games as the Dolphins interim head coach in 2011, where Miami went 2-1. So overall, he's been a head coach for 127 games with a 59-68 mark, 1-2 in the playoffs. The quarterback for the Bucs is Baker Mayfield, 30 years old, was the #1 overall pick in 2018 out of Oklahoma by the Cleveland Browns. He, of course, played a few seasons with the Browns, and then things got goofy there, and they were silly and moved on. And then he went and had a cup of coffee with the Panthers and Rams in 2022. Then he came to Tampa Bay in 2023, and he's been the starter since. He signed an extension, and it's been a really cool reclamation story of how Baker Mayfield's career got back on track with the Buccaneers. He's 6'1", 215 pounds. He has started 112 games so far in his career, and he's 56-56 in those games. But with Tampa Bay, he's 25-18. In 2025, he's completing 64% of his passes, 243 passing yards per game on average, 16 passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions. His advanced metrics right now, he is plus 0.05 expected points added per dropback. That's 17th in the NFL. He throws deep 11.5% of the time. That is 16th. And on those deep throws, he's been really good. 12 of 36 for 460 yards, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. Yards after catch accounts for 53% of his passing yards. That's 7th highest in the NFL. He throws to his first read 65% of the time. That is 21st. His average time to throw is 2.64 seconds. That's 22nd. Throws a catchable ball on 76% of his throws. That's 18th. His turnover-worthy throw rate is pretty high, 3.2%, and that's 25th in the NFL. Keep in mind, he's only thrown 2 interceptions, so he's had some good fortune on that. He threw a bunch of interceptions last year. The drop rate is 4.2%. That's 25th. And so that's very good. 25th, meaning it's the 25th lowest. So it's a good number there. He's pressuring on 39% of dropbacks. That's 14th, so middle of the pack. They run play action 23% of the time. That's 25th. They run screens 12% of the time, which is 9th. I think very highly of Baker Mayfield. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think he's had a tough season in some ways. They've had a million injuries to their offense, whether it's been offensive linemen, really inside and outside. Mike Evans, their star receiver, he's not available. He's on injured reserve. Chris Godwin, another highly paid receiver, has played like 2 games. Their starting running back, Bucky Irving, has played 4 games so far this year. It has just been a bunch of dudes in and out of the lineup everywhere. Not to mention it's the first year of their new offensive coordinator. And Baker has his own injury right now. Looks like he has some type of oblique deal. He's been playing through it, but he's played a lot different over the last few weeks since he took a hit kind of extending the ball, and he's only scrambled 1 time in the last 4 games, and that 1 time was the play that he got hurt on. And, you know, Baker's a really good quarterback in terms of being able to use his legs and extend plays and be creative, and he's really twitchy in the pocket, but you could tell he doesn't have some of that right now. And so when it's all clicking for Baker, you know, I think he's a top 5, top 6 quarterback in the NFL, you know, right now based on that injury and, you know, multiple guys up front being in and out, the receivers in and out, the running backs in and out, new coordinator. You know, they've had some growing pains and bumps along the way, and they're in a little bit of a slump offensively over the last 3 games, but certainly a potent group. You know, they very well could get Chris Godwin and Bucky Irving back this week. And so it'll be a good challenge for this Bills defense. And we'll talk a lot more about that matchup here on the other side of it. So folks, be sure to stick with me. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere that Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. I've been using Prize Picks during both football Sundays and NBA tip-offs. It just keeps every game exciting. And the injury reboot feature is awesome. If one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot feature will save your lineup from a loss. So check it out. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Welcome back, folks, and thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network, where it is your team every day. Folks, I would highly encourage you to check out the Herd Mentality Substack. I provide additional written and film content through the Herd Mentality Substack, and this is a great week for the amount of content that you can find there. Of course, the All-22 review clips, that has been available, but I just put out my player grade updates, so I grade every player on the Bills, and 6 of them got grade adjustments this week, and so you can see the analysis on that. Tons of good nuggets in that article. My second quarter report card is coming out later this week, where I go through and I grade the Bills, every component of it. I talk about what's working, what's not working, and then you also get the scouting primer later this week. So tons of content through the Herd Mentality Substack. If you'd like to check that out, go to thejoemarino.com and see more details on that. Plus, as an incentive for being part of the Herd Mentality Substack, you get into our Discord channel where we have over 2,000 Bills fans in there. It's one big organized group chat, and I love what we do on Wednesday nights. I go live every Wednesday night, usually with Jerry Ostrowski, and we hang out. I take questions live, but we also do film. And like Wednesday night, this past Wednesday, Jerry and I went through all 22 of the plays that the Dolphins either blitzed or had a simulated pressure, and we broke down the protection schemes. It was unbelievable to go through that with Jerry, and we usually do something like that every single Wednesday. So be part of it, and just go to thejoemarino.com. You can go to the show notes and find the link, or just type it right into your browser. check out the Herd Mentality Substack, get in on that, and then also get into our Discord channel. All right, the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is Josh Grizzard. It's his first season on the job. He's 35 years old, and each of the last 2 years, the offensive coordinator for the Bucs has left to become a head coach. So 2 years ago, it was Dave Canales. He's now the head coach of the Panthers. Last year, it was Liam Cohen, who is now the head coach of the Jaguars. And Josh Grizzard went from being their passing game coordinator in 2024 to now their offensive coordinator. Prior to that, he was a offensive assistant coach with the Dolphins from 2017 through 2023. So far this year, they're scoring 24 points per game. That's 11th in the NFL. They pass the ball 60% of the time. They run it 40%. So that's the 8th highest pass rate. That's the 25th highest run rate. So it's definitely a pass-aggressive team. They're 15th in EPA per play. They're 15th in EPA per pass. They're 15th in EPA per rush. So very consistent, 15th. They're 37% on third down. That's pretty bad. 24th. They're also 52% in the red zone. That's 24th. So you can see, some of the stuff offensively that you would expect to be a little better with Tampa hasn't been there. But again, tons of injuries and guys in and out of the lineup. So let's talk about the personnel that they're expected to have. At wide receiver, Emeka Egbuka is the story here. That was their first-round pick. He's building a case to be the offensive rookie of the year, winning down the field. He's a very much a do-everything receiver that can win at all levels. He has good yards after catch skill. He's really becoming very quickly a quality starting NFL wide receiver. Chris Godwin, who's a household name in the NFL, it looks like he's going to be back for this game. He's missed all but 2 games this year. He had a big injury end of last season. When he's healthy, he's phenomenal, but still obviously getting calloused up, getting himself acclimated. That'll be a boost to their receiver core if he can go. They also have Sterling Shepard, who played with Baker Mayfield back during their time together at Oklahoma. At one point was one of the better slot receivers in the league. He's still a good depth player, but not quite the threat he was earlier in his career. And then Tez Johnson has really emerged for them. He's out of Oregon. He's a rookie. He's, I think, 5'10", like 160 pounds. He's little, but he's pretty dynamic with his change of direction. He's quick. He's not super explosive in terms of breakaway speed, but he's got a lot of quickness to him. And he's found some production over the last, month or so. So that's kind of the characters at receiver. No Mike Evans, no Jalen McMillan. So they're down a few guys, but getting Chris Godwin back will certainly help. At tight end, they have Cade Otton. Has kind of emerged as their guy at tight end. I think he's a good NFL starting tight end. I don't think he's, a difference maker or anything like that, but think of the Dalton Schultz brand of tight end, the Jake Ferguson, that type of, hey, really solid across the board NFL tight end. And then Payne Durham is a depth tight end for them that specializes a little bit more on the blocking side of things. Cade Otton, they move around. They play him a lot in the slot. At running back, they're expected to get Bucky Irving back this week. Had a phenomenal rookie season last year, and he's only played 4 games so far this year. Bucky Irving is in some ways reminiscent of Devin Singletary with more pass-catching upside in that smaller back, much quicker than fast, has that make-you-miss ability in a phone booth, but not necessarily possessing that breakaway speed. So he's very good. He's a good, creative, dynamic playmaker, quicker than fast though. So you're not he's like Devon Achane is explosive, lightning in a bottle. Like you're going to be in trouble if you can't get an angle on him. Bucky Irving is quicker than fast without the breakaway speed, good pass catcher, smaller back. He's a good running back, but he's unique in some ways. Think like the Warwick Dunn mold of running backs. Rachaad White will be part of the game plan. He's at times he's been their starter. Bucky Irving took the job from him. He's a good pass catching back. He's got decent size. Not a preferred starter though. He's more of a depth player. And then they have Sean Tucker. You probably remember him from his time at Syracuse where he had some really big seasons. He's their third running back. He's also involved in their return stuff a little bit. And so when it comes to carry distribution, that's going to be fascinating to me because, well, we haven't seen that much of Irving and White together. I think Irving is the guy that they'd like to take most of the work, but with it being his first game back, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how the workload is split at running back. But they have two good running backs. When it comes to their target distribution, the leading target guy here is Emeka Egbuka with 76 targets. K. Dotton has 48. Then it's Sterling Shepard with 40. Tez Johnson with 30. Keeping in mind, Tez Johnson's really like only 4 or 5 games into being a thing for this offense. Rachaad White has 20 targets. Bucky Irving has 19 in 4 games. Chris Godwin has 14 in 2 games. So I think you can expect Irving and Godwin to be higher on this pecking order on Sunday. Looking at their offensive line, they've got some injuries here, but their left tackle, Tristan Wirfs, is one of the elite NFL offensive linemen. He's special. At left guard, Ben Bredesen is their preferred starter. He missed last week with a hamstring injury. Mike Jordan, depth players, a guy that's been around a little bit, but have always been a shaky player. He'd be the starter if Bredesen can't go. At center, it's Graham Barton, who was a first-round pick last year. He's looking like a good young center in the NFL. That actually played some left tackle earlier in the year when Tristan Wirfs was out. Their right guard is Dan Feeney, who they actually signed off the Bills practice squad and is starting for them because their preferred starting right guard, Cody Mauch, is on injured reserve. So they're down some, to some of their depth players at guard. And then their right tackle is Luke Gadecki, who has emerged as one of the best right tackles in the league. I don't think he's like an elite Penei Sewell type guy, but he's a quality starter for sure. So really good tackles, one of the better tackle pairs in the league, a good young center, but then you're down to some depth players at guard. But I will say between Mike Jordan and Dan Feeney, they're depth players, but they're guys that have played a lot of snaps in the NFL. So it's not like going to be too big for them. They're just kind of limited options, but you could do a whole lot worse in terms of being down, into your depth chart than Feeney and Jordan, because those guys have, played a lot of snaps. Both of them have. So what are my keys for the Bills defensively against this Bucs offense? Well, number one, I think you have to be very aggressive with your pressure schemes. This is a Bucs offense that's been reluctant to run. I hope that remains that way. But you think about working back in Bucky Irving. You think about Baker and, kind of working through this oblique injury. I think you want to get after him in some big ways. And Baker Mayfield, when he's clean in the pocket and not blitzed, he completes 70% of his passes. When he's pressured or blitzed, that goes down to 55%. And so I think you have to get creative with how you attack Baker, test the interior of this offensive line where they've got a couple of depth players with an exceptional pair of tackles. So I want to see some really interesting ways to run twists and stunts and blitzes that threaten the A gaps and the B gaps, because I don't think you're going to have a lot of success just trying to win with your best players, Bosa and Rousseau, on the outside. I think you have to figure out ways to get some interior pressure, and I'd be willing to blitz and be very creative with that. So be aggressive with your pressure schemes. Number two is you cannot let this Bucs rushing offense come to life. It really hasn't so far this year, but I'm sure they're thinking, hey, our offensive line in some ways is getting healthy. We're getting our running back back. The Bills' run defense is ripe to test. The Bills need to make sure that doesn't happen in this game. And obviously the Bills have had a ton of issues with their run defense, and, the defensive tackle situation is not ideal right now. The linebackers are playing poorly. You got to figure it out, because if Tampa's going to be two-dimensional against you, that's going to be tough. So make sure that this rushing offense doesn't come to life. Number three is I think the Bills need to be ready to defend some deep throws. The Bills don't face a ton of deep throws so far this year. They've only faced 28 throws that were 20 yards or more down the field. That's 25th in the NFL, so not a ton of that. And they've been pretty good at defending them. They're 12 of 28 on deep throws against the Bills, 8th best passer rating on deep throws. But Baker's going to spin it. He's going to rip it down the field. Tez Johnson, Emeka Egbuka, those are players that he's willing to really launch it down the field. And, Baker's got some really good deep ball accuracy. And so I would not underestimate Baker Mayfield hunting for some big plays and testing the Bills out vertically. So you better be ready for that. And then number four is you have to finish. Baker has way less interceptions than he should this year because the other team doesn't catch the ball when it's thrown to him. You got to finish tackles. This is a good yards after catch team. You got to finish sacks. Baker's, pretty slippery in the pocket. So when you have a chance to make a play, make a tackle, make an interception, make a sack, do it. You can't leave it on the table because Baker's got that special gene to him where, you get him freed up where he can be creative and, he's going to make you pay for that. So you better catch the ball if it's thrown to you, finish plays, finish sacks, and not allow the magic of Baker Mayfield that can show up get you because it can. All right, coming up next, the Bills offense against this Bucs defense. I think there are some very clear opportunities to exploit some weaknesses for Tampa Bay. I'll tell you what those are here next. Folks, be sure to stick with me. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, it's easy, and it's backed by the Game Time guarantee. You're always going to get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. The app makes it very simple. You can even see your exact view from your seat before you purchase, and honestly, it's just faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way that I've purchased tickets. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Welcome back, folks. Let's talk about this Bucs defense that doesn't actually have a defensive coordinator. I suppose it's Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles calls the defense. They have George Edwards to coordinate the pass defense. They have Larry Foote to coordinate the run defense, but Todd Bowles is your play caller. So far this year, they are allowing 23 points per game. That's 14th. They're 6th in EPA per play, 7th in defensive EPA per pass, 7th in defensive EPA per rush. They allow third down conversions 39% of the time. That's 17th. They allow a touchdown in the red zone 62% of the time. That's 21st. They play man coverage on 22% of snaps. That's 18th. They blitz a ton. They're 32% blitz rate, 6th highest in the NFL, and it's working. They're 4th in pressure rate. They're 2nd in pressure rate over expectation. And so I'm not going to sit here and tell you about a list of amazing pass rushers that the Bucs have, but schematically, it works for them, and they know how to get home with their scheme. So let's talk about these players that they have defensively. Up front on the defensive line, Vita Vea. That's the dude, right? He's a rare guy. Big, massive man that can move, that has pass rush ability, that can really eat space. Is a big assignment for this Bills interior offensive line. He's one of those blue chippers. So Vita Vea, massive challenge for the Bills. I'm not going to call him Derek Brown, because I think they're very different players. But, the Bills played Derek Brown a few weeks ago against Carolina, and they were able to really kind of run away from him and work the ball horizontally a little bit. I think you got to try to do that type of stuff with Vita Vea clogging up the middle. Logan Hall is another one of their down linemen, early second-round pick. Think your classic 5-tech, long arms, heavy hands, compression-style player. Not a ton of juice, but, can play with extension and two-gap on the edge. Greg Gaines is another one of their defensive linemen. He's been a good odd front defensive lineman for a number of years. Profiles as kind of a nose. He can play in some wider alignments. A pretty firm player. And then Anthony Nelson, which in some ways he's like Logan Hall, maybe a little bit more dynamic in terms of movement skills. He's been there for a long time, knows this defense, can play that 5-tech hybrid stand-up outside linebacker role a little bit. Then they have Elijah Roberts, who's a good-looking young rookie out of SMU that I think is going to be an answer for their defense for a long time, is that 5-tech type player. And then Elijah Simmons, like a 340-pound nose tackle out of Tennessee that's actually provided them some good reps as well, despite being low pedigree. He's getting on the field, and he's been pretty solid. On the edge, their main guy here is Yaya Diaby. He's really explosive, like a true speed guy. And, I talk about this scheme, and what they love to do is create runways for guys like Yaya Diaby. And so, of course, he can win with speed off the edge, but, they'll create some tracks for him to go and try to get him isolated up one-on-one and He's obviously a very dynamic athlete. They have Chris Braswell, who they drafted in the second round a couple of years ago out of Alabama. Hasn't quite come together, but certainly a player with a decent pedigree that profiles well for this style of defense. They also have Hassan Reddick. It doesn't sound like he's going to be able to go for this game, but obviously if he can, that's a really good outside pass rusher. At linebacker, Levante David still there. He's been a legend for a long time. One of the best linebackers in the league. Maybe not quite that right now as he's, getting a lot older. But certainly a guy that instinctively is really exceptional. He's big for the communication. They blitz him. He's not a player to be taken lightly, even if he's aging. His running mate is Servassier Dennis out of Pittsburgh. Not a player that thrives in coverage and in space, but he's a decent downhill player against the run, and they'll blitz him as well. At corner, Jamel Dean is playing at an extremely high level. Good size, press man corner, physical, not the type of player that if Keon Coleman is isolated against Jamel Dean that you want to go after. This is kind of that Christian Gonzalez profile, the JC Horn, that's just not a good matchup for you to be going after. So he'll probably erase whoever he's going up against. His running mate is Zyon McCollum, who is a really good development story. Raw player that has turned into a good starter for them, got a big opportunity last year. He's now signed an extension. I think he's like a $16 million a year corner. Ton of athleticism, size, length, can tackle. He's become a pretty good corner in the NFL. So they got a really nice outside tandem. And then the slot, it's Jacob Parrish, who's a rookie. And if you remember my draft analysis, I love this guy. And he is delivering in a big way for them. He's excellent. He blitzes. He can play in man coverage. He tackles extremely well. He's a dog. He's an absolute dog out there. And he's looking like he's going to be a really high-quality player there in the slot. He's already become that in some ways. At safety, they got a good pair of safeties. Antoine Winfield Jr., he's a stud. Really versatile, can play all over the secondary. Physical, ball skills. They can blitz him. He tackles. He's outstanding. He's a really outstanding player. And then they got a good young guy next to him in Tyke Smith, another versatile guy that can play all over the secondary and gives them playmaking ability, physicality, range. They got a lot of players I really love in the secondary. So it's going to be a nice challenge here for the Bills. And there's some definite ways that you can get after these guys. I know I said a lot of nice things about their personnel, but I think there's some very clear opportunities for how you can attack this defense. So let's get into it. Number one, you got to be ready to beat the blitz. They're going to blitz. It's Todd Bowles. He's going to blitz. And if you've seen how the Bills have handled protections, slide protections, it's been very inconsistent. Josh Allen's nowhere near as good under pressure so far this year. And the Bills got to be ready for this. They have to have answers baked in. You got to be sound in your rules of slide protections. You need to have hot routes, and you need to be able to negotiate free runners. And so Josh Allen's pocket management, which has been highly inconsistent this year, needs to come together in this one because Bowles is going to blitz. Number two is the Bills have got to get the running backs going in the passing game. The Bucs allow the second most passing yards per games to running back so far this year. 9.4 yards per play. That's by far the most. You got to do it. You got to do it. They're seventh worst in EPA per pass when running backs are targeted. James Cook, Ty Johnson, Ray Davis. This is a game where they should be heavily featured in the passing game. And really, I don't like the matchups for the Bills on the perimeter. Zyon McCollum and Jamel Dean are going to swallow up Keon Coleman and Tyrell Shavers. Jacob Parrish is a good slot player. I'm not going to say he's going to erase Khalil Shakir. We'll see what Josh Palmer has in this game. But ultimately, those outside corners, it's a good pair. And the Bills don't have the receiving talent to really threaten it. You don't have Dalton Kincaid in this game, you better get your running backs going. Because that's probably the best part of what you have to throw the ball to. And that's a part of this defense that just has not been very successful. Get your running backs going in the passing game. Second most yards per game to running backs, 9.4 yards per play, seventh worst EPA per pass. Come on, Joe Brady. It's right there. Throw the ball to Cook, Davis, and Johnson. Figure out ways to make that happen. Number three, this needs to be a heavy play action game. The Bucs are 29th in EPA per play against play action. They allow 10.1 yards per play against play action. That's 31st in the NFL. Josh Allen's number 4 in the NFL in EPA per dropback with play action. Joe Brady, you hear me, dude? This is pretty straightforward. They're bad at defending play action. Call lots of play action and throw the ball to your running backs. And then number 4, you need to test this run defense. Like snap to snap, they have a good run defense, but they've been very susceptible to explosive runs. And they've had some chinks in the armor lately. They gave up 166 last week to New England. They gave up 164 to the Bucs. And I think about Travion Henderson and Jahmyr Gibbs as explosive backs. Well, James Cook is too. Since week 5, the Buccaneers have allowed the highest percentage of rushing yards in the NFL on explosive runs, which are runs that are 15 yards or more. 50.4% of the rushing yards that they've given up have come on explosive runs. You got to find ways to get some explosive runs against this defense. They've given up the 8th highest percent of runs overall that go for 15 or more. And the Bills obviously have a unique scheme with a unique running back, Josh Allen, multiple tight ends. They'll get the fullback going. They'll run gap. They'll run zone. You got to draw up some ways to get James Cook some opportunities for some explosive runs. So to me, this is really straightforward. Be ready for the blitz, throw the ball to your running backs, have a high frequency of play action, and figure out ways to get some explosive runs against a defense that's been giving up explosive runs. Real quick on special teams, their kicker is Chase McLaughlin. He's a good NFL kicker, 29 years old. He bounced around a ton early in his career. In fact, he actually started his career with the Bills. He's been on a bunch of teams, but has found a home here with the Bucs. Over the last 2 years, he's made over 90% of his field goals. He's 18 to 22 so far this year. His splits are unbelievable. I've never seen anything like this. So for his career, he's 84% from 50 yards or more. I think he's 8 of 8 this year. So 84% from 50 yards or more. That's exceptional. 64% from 40 to 49, 95% from 30 to 39, and 100% from 20 to 29. I don't know what it is about that 40 to 49 range, but it's crazy to me that would be the one that's, 20%. He's 20% worse on field goals 40 to 49 than 50 plus. It's got to be studied. I've never seen quite like that. Their punter is Riley Dixon, the epitome of an average NFL punter. He's been punting in the league since, he's had 4 years with Denver, 4 years with the Giants, 1 with the Rams, and now with Tampa Bay. So he's, very much an established NFL punter. So there you have it. The Bucs, interesting opponent, big one for the Bills. You're in a dogfight here. You're in an absolute dogfight, and you got to stack wins. These are really important games. It's a common opponent that the Patriots just beat. If you're gonna have any chance to do this, you got to win this game. You got to win this game. We'll talk more about it. We'll have one more conversation on Saturday where I'll give you my final thoughts. We'll talk to banged up Bills about the injuries, and I'll give you my predictions, and we'll obviously also talk about some of the new additions, McCole Hardman and Morgan Fox, and any other last-minute stuff to get to before the game on Saturday. So don't miss any of that. Make sure you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. Look forward to catching up with you again real soon.